Okay, so Graham, thank you for joining us on the Truth About Business today. Been really looking forward to catching up with you. Dean Jackson mentioned in the last episode that you and him are competing for articles written about you in the Derby Evening Telegraph. So I've been looking forward to finding about your journey. I know it's been an exciting and definitely an interesting one. So thanks for coming on the show.
No worries, no worries. and
So,
in difficult times as well.
It is very challenging times, and it's going to be good to see, how an entrepreneur of your experience and wisdom is also dealing with the challenges that I'm sure we'll get into. But to kick things off, can you give us an idea of where it all started and what was your first job and how did you get it?
Well, my first job, is a very interesting question. That is, my first job probably was canoeing.
Okay.
Now, I was a sports person and I did canoe slalom. And at 13, 14, it started to get increasingly serious. And 3 sports in the UK were chosen to do this American system. Canoe slalom was chosen, rowing was chosen, and cycling was chosen. And I became part of this elite structure, albeit at a very young age. And that gave me some grounding, and it gave me some structure that I never got from school, unfortunately. Then at 14, I went to work experience, and that just transformed my life completely because I went to work. And to be fair, if somebody had put 60 quid at the end of every GCSE, I would have probably got more of them. But I did my work experience. Work experience was linked to canoe slalom. The canoe slalom boats are made out of carbon fibre generally. So I worked in this little company in Nottingham, which was just fantastic. And then, as I say, it just developed and developed and developed. And as soon as I left school, we left school, I distinctly remember this, we left school on a Tuesday, and by Wednesday, I had a job. And I didn't bother with sixth form or anything like that. I just went to work. And the harder you work, the more you get. So that was the career path. My first job was probably sport. Sport took me into composites. I then worked at P&H Fiberglass at West Hallam, which was fantastic. I mean, it used to take me 46 minutes to cycle there and 48 minutes to get back because of the hill at Stanley. Unbelievable. And what experience that was. And then I got a second job at a company called Aztec, which was advanced structural technology. And they made, I just can't, you pinch yourself now, think about it. They made Group C cars for Jaguar for Le Mans.
Wow. And so even from that early stage then, when you left school and went straight into the working environment, you skipped sixth form, you didn't go to college or any of that. Yeah. Was that because you were already knowing that you were going to do a job that you were passionate about and you loved doing? Or was it that you had a real drive to go out there and start making money? What was the reason behind that?
It's a very difficult one, really, because I think even today, if somebody said, "What's your career?" I wouldn't really, I wouldn't be able to answer it. But at that time, it was all linked to sports, and there was quite a lot going on in canoeing because we were all fiddling with boats, and we're fiddling with design, we're fiddling with materials. And I ended up working in a company that made XGR-15s, the XGR-14, the first Brawn car that won at Le Mans straight out of the box. We then made all the tooling and composite parts for the XJ220. And I was like, wow, they're paying me to be here. I mean, it's just unbelievable. They pay me to work in a factory making super duper bits. And it comes back to P&H Fiberglass. The first week, I got to the clocking out machine on the Friday. I got a paper envelope and it had £60 in it, rolled up in a little brown envelope, all done. I can still smell that money today. The experience of getting that. And we're in this digital age where everything's wired and money's flying around everywhere. And I think when you start a job, physically getting that money and feeling it and thinking, I've got £60. And within 3 or 4 months, that got to £100. And within a couple of months, it got to £120. And I bought stuff. And that was an amazing experience. And you don't really learn the tactile, I don't think you learn enough going through some of the structures in the UK about the value of money, how you earn it, how you earn more. It's always put your hand up. Can I do more? Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do some overtime? And you know, I went from a scooter to a Mark II Escort, and then my Mark II Escort got a gear interior. And I look back on that, it's brilliant. But then 3 years later, I'm working in this company, Aztec, and I'm on a trainee, proper structures, become a trainee laminator. And my parents walked me into the Vauxhall dealership at the time at Pentagon Island, and I bought a brand new Nova. I was like, wow. So I think you're on this voyage of discovery. Money does not buy your happiness, but what you've got to learn really quickly at the right time of your life is how to earn it, how to value it, what to do with it.
Now, I think you are, you know, a lot of people, particularly when they leave school or when they leave college, they don't necessarily look for perhaps a job that they are already passionate about. Now, you'd gone, you know, you were doing the canoe work as work experience, and you'd then gone to this company that was creating these amazing parts for the cars that were winning Le Mans. When you look back at that, do you see that a lot of luck was involved in those early positions, or was it as a result of the actions that you took? Were you looking for these places of work that you know you'd really thrive in?
Complete luck. I remember being sat at mum and dad's 19-ish, and I had the opportunity to go and work at Aztec or go and work as a gym instructor at the Carrington Club. And they were going to put me on a trainee thing, but that would have been a step back to being YTS. And I was offered, if you like, an apprenticeship, although they weren't around back then, but I was offered this detailed structure for working in a factory. And my mum and dad, bless them, you know, if you go and work in a factory, you're going to work in a factory for the rest of your life. That's no means a bad thing. If you go and work in a gym, you're taking your sports career, you're taking your canoeing, you're an outdoor person. Yeah. Sunday dinner, my dad got a 50p piece, he flipped it in the air and went, heads or tails. Simple as that.
Wow. And so you made your decision based off that towing cost?
Based on that, and I went and worked at Aztec. And it was an amazing experience. There are things around the factories that, you know, the banter, the interaction with others, but I was the youngest by a long way in this factory, and that made me the cheapest by a long way. And when I was working alongside the pattern makers, I'd be saying, why are you doing this? Why do you do that? How do you make that better? And that sportiness of understanding the data, you've done it like that 3 times. The 4th time, how do you do it better, faster? What's the technique? What can we buy to make that bit better? And I just dragged that through my whole career. And when everybody says you can't do something, you bloody can do it. You absolutely can. There's nothing you can't do. So I ended up doing landing a job in the R&D cell of this factory, and there was only 3 of us. The engineering in charge of it was absolutely brilliant, Sean Maloney. My line manager, John Perry, was absolutely fantastic, as mad as a box of frogs, and me. And we were making components for the XJ220. It was the world's first supercar.
Wow. Now that's quite a prestigious position for, I presume you're still around sort of age of 19, 20 at that sort of time?
Yes.
Those ethics that you've mentioned there of working hard, which in my research, they're clearly a big part of what you do and a big part of what you promote. Was that something that you figured out for yourself early on, or was it instilled from people around you, like your parents? Where did that understanding of working hard gets bigger rewards come from?
sport, and to a point, because you've got to have a lot of luck with a few factors coming into sport. But you lay a foundation, and you're building up to something. It might be an Olympic selection, it might be an under 14 championship. It makes no odds. You're building to something. If you start to break that down to what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to achieve it, suddenly you've got a plan. And these have been built from a very early stage, because canoeing, if I went from Darley Abbey to town and back on an endurance run, I wanted to do that quicker than the last one. And if I went to Home Pierpoint and I was training with the Great Britain team, and there was all these great people about you, you'd be watching them, and they might do 10 runs, but I would watch and watch and watch and watch and watch, and then think, right, I'm going to do 2 really good runs. So you've got to work hard, and you've got to go to the gym, you've got to run, you've got to get your endurance in, and you take all those skills into business. And I'm afraid somebody doesn't come along and say, hey, Graham, you're a good guy. Here's a bag of luck. You've got to work hard. And in its early days of starting my own business, my goodness, no stone was left unturned. It was just manic.
But what was before we get to that, you were in the research department with yourself and 2 other colleagues.
Yes.
What happened between then and you starting your first business? What was the journey between then?
Well, we were trying to unlock a brand new process, which was very innovative, had some risk around it, but we were trying to unlock this new process, and it would have taken composites to another level and to another level. And that was quite interesting.
And for those that don't quite understand what composites are, could you sort of summarize what you mean by that and what their uses are?
So we all jump in a car and we can drive it around. Cars have been made out of steel because it's cheap and we can produce parts quickly. Because of the environment and a few other things hitting us, cars are increasingly becoming aluminium. So that's slightly more expensive, but we can achieve the same production rates with composites. Particularly back in the sort of 1990s, you could make a part for a Formula 1 car, and it would take you 3 weeks to make one part. What's happened over time is that composites have become slightly more productionized, and we can now make a part every day. And with some investment or a brave customer, we could make parts every 4 or 5 minutes. That still doesn't mean we can keep up with Toyota at Burniston, but it means we can be really innovative and get some great technology onto aeroplanes and battery-powered cars and all sorts of stuff. So composites as a carbon fibre material or a glass fibre material with resin, make a component, make any shape, any size, any colour kind of thing. But the process historically has always held the materials back. And back in 1990, we were trying to unlock that process. So very, very lucky to be part of that. Very, very lucky, because there was mistakes and we were pioneering and it didn't go well. And then it started to come back towards us as a project. But then the business changed. So you then go into another round of emotions, and that was very similar to canoeing. So in 1996, I'd built up and built up and built up and built up, had a fairly serious go at making the Olympic team, and thought, gosh, I've just missed that. And now I've enjoyed what I did at Aztec. I've been doing some consultancy jobs and I've been juggling a little bit because I don't want to live on the purse of mum and dad. I am 23. I'm going to have to do something. And I set up my own composite company.
Wow. Okay. So what was the chain of events that led to you eventually thinking, right, this is me now, I'm going to start a business for myself? And how difficult was the decision to make?
We did a selection race in Wales on a little part of it's a dam release river in Bala. It's a fantastic part of the river. I rolled the second to last gate. I just rolled it down my arm, and the judge saw it, and I got a penalty, and that stopped me going. So I had to get over myself for that. It was a silly mistake. There was no money in canoeing. I've had my go. What am I going to do? I'm 23. I need a house. I've got to grow up. All my mates are coming back from university, and they're all. So I thought, well, I'm going to start my own business, and that was the chain of events.
So had you had aspirations from earlier years? Did you always see yourself as becoming a business owner or an entrepreneur, or was it just literally that situation with missing the spots on the Olympic team?
I think, like most entrepreneurs, I've had moments with bosses where you think, oh man, you just don't know what you're doing. I mean, it's just so frustrating. And in my younger days, I'm terrible for it now, but when I was younger, good God, if a coach wasn't committed, he got told. And I'm sorry for that, but I'm the one getting wet. I'm the one trying hard. I'm the one putting the training in. If you've missed me, go past because you're piddling about talking to somebody else, not interested. And when you take that into business, I'm trying really hard to make this business better. And they put this new general manager in at Aztec, and he didn't even know my name. I thought, you utter knob. Utter. And one person changed the business completely. I thought, good God. So, starting a business seemed the most natural thing to do because at age 23, I was either going to end up in a business trying to climb the corporate ladder and be frustrated by people that are in your way because you've got energy and they haven't. And it was an itch. So I itched the itch.
And what was the first business? What was the purpose of that first business that you set up at the time? What did you want it to do as a function?
We wanted to make motorsport components. And I sat in my bedroom at mum and dad's house. We had this bit of a bizarre extension. So there was a room to go through to get to my room, and that became my office. And mum and dad were like, what are you doing? This is silly, all the rest of it. But I'd got an Autosport directory. So there's the Autosport magazine that comes out weekly. Every year they do a directory of everybody in the motorsport industry. I got that in November. And by the end of January, I had my first order and I was supplying parts to the Subaru World Rally team.
Wow. So the Subaru World Rally team at this point, did they have any idea that you were working from the room between your bedroom and the rest of the house?
Not a dicky bird.
And how did you make the parts? Where did you get them made from?
I ended up effectively buying and selling. So I became Mr. Composite, and I've taken this with me forever. If you're not in front of your customer, somebody else is. So I had this little Peugeot, 306 Peugeot. I did 74,000 miles in the first year. Sometimes I'd go down to ProDrive twice in a day. And once I went down to ProDrive twice, and then on to Nissan. And I became the guy that delivered. And how it all delivered and who was doing it, nobody ever asked. So I never told them. And then we made a development part, which was brilliant because the World Rally cars were becoming different animals. There was the 22B was coming along, and I'd seen that in the Clay studio over in Norfolk. I was like, wow, I'm seeing a car before anybody else in the world has seen this. It's amazing with Peter Stevens, the designer. And they wanted us to make the bumpers. And then there was two things from this meeting. I'll never forget it. Well, two or three things. the first one, I was at ProDrive, and they had this beautiful facility just off the M40. The boardroom table was glass, and all the way through this meeting, the purchaser was scratching his nuts all the way through it. And I thought, what are you doing? It's a glass table. We can all see this. And then at the end of it all, he said, Graham, we do want you to make these bumpers. We think there'll be roughly 150 per car. We're going to be running 2, maybe 3 cars. So give us a proposal for that. We want to come and see your facilities. I haven't got any. And I sat there and thought, well, this was the moment, so it was going to happen. So I calmly picked my diary up and said, well, you're rallying here. Can you come and visit us? I don't know, when are you going to be clear? 5 weeks? And they said, yeah. And I came out of there, phoned Dad. Dad worked at British Gas at the time. Phoned him at his desk. Dad, you'll never guess what's happened. They want to come see the factory. I told you this would happen. It's your fault. Get on with it. And we ended up opening a factory in 3.5 weeks. And ProDrive came along and gave us an order for the World Rally Car front bumpers.
Wow.
And for them, they thought we'd been in that building for years. But we'd been.
Wow. Okay. So going back to making those first calls then and go from the A to Z, how many calls did you have to make before you got, well, it was Subaru that was your first customer, and that was you started in November, you got your first customer in January. How many rejections did you have to take before you got that yes?
Loads. And still today. And people go, oh, I'm afraid it happens. Not everybody likes you. Not everybody wants to buy from you. Some people have got favourite suppliers. There's personality clashes. There's all sorts going on. But because we cracked Subaru, and Subaru came out the box and they were really punchy and there was a fast car, what actually happened, which again was riding the luck, their engineers were poached. So one of their engineers went to Toyota, and suddenly we're supplying Toyota in Germany. And then suddenly Nissan started to do a World Rally Car, and we started to get parts on that. You think, well, we've now got 3 customers. And then we started to supply Malcolm Wilson at M Sport. He's still a customer today.
Wow. And how certain were you when you first started this, when you were making those calls from the room in your house, that this was going to be a success?
I had no idea.
No idea?
No idea.
What kept you going through all those rejections? Do you think that's just always been a part of your personality, or was it just, what was the motivation and what kept you going despite customers consistently telling you we're not interested?
I think I knew that given a slither of an opportunity, I could be better than anybody at that time in composites. I mean, and it's a very odd market. Your podcast with Dino, he's been disruptive, and he's taken on Nike, and he's doing. All I had to do was take on other composite companies that didn't have a plan. They were being told what to do. They were relatively lazy companies. And I turn up, where's my next job? Drop that one off, pick the next one up. Drop this one off, pick the next one up. And I just built this momentum and this can do. And a lot of our competitors, and they do it today, which some have success with it, some don't. But my job isn't to say to the customer, why do you want that? My job is to say, here you have it. And in an engineering bubble, a lot of our competitors, I'm afraid, will say, oh, thank you for the order. 3 layers of material, are you sure? Or should it be 4? Like, McLaren F1, I've got 300 world-class engineers that want stuff on the car. Don't bloody ask them whether they're making it right or wrong. Just make the bugger. Get on with it. So that's what we do.
Okay. And so you'd gone from sitting at this boardroom table then to telling people that you've got a factory, to 4.5 weeks later, you've actually gone out there and got a factory. What happened next?
Well, the day ProDrive turned up, they turned up at 2:00, and at 10 o'clock the oven turned up. And the oven was sat on its pallet, and I drilled a thumping great hole through the wall and poked the cable just through the wall. It wasn't even wired in. So, but once we got off the starting block, we pulled in a couple of customers. Within a year, we've moved to a bigger factory. We then sat at around the 13, 15 staff. We then won another order, and we moved to 2 factories, and the staff were at about 25, 30, something of that nature. And then that gets us into 2001, and we did our first acquisition.
Okay, so in terms of the size of the business and the number of employees that you had, you were obviously growing quite quickly. When was the point that you realised you needed to bring your first member of staff on board, and who was it, and how did you find them?
It was a guy called Tim Barlow, who I'd worked with through my days at Aztec as a trainee, and I still see Tim now. He works for Smith Clocks. Do remind him that he left quite a few times, but he wasn't quite a believer. So he was the first member of staff, and then the first factory was in Colville. It was the only factory we could find that could be open and operational quickly enough. And Leicestershire County Council were absolutely brilliant with us on that, I have to say that. And so we started to employ more and more people locally, and then we started to have 2 shifts, because the timings of trying to get these parts to customers for 10 o'clock in the morning meant we went through the night. And that just seemed a natural thing. People said, Graham, what are you doing? Like, customers want stuff at 10 o'clock. They don't want it at 3 o'clock. In order to get stuff to the customer for 10 o'clock, we've got to go through the night, finish it for 9 o'clock, put it in the car and travel.
What would you say was, particularly during those first 12 months of being in operation? I mean, you already strike me as a person that doesn't really see problems. You see challenges that need to be overcome, and you just make it happen. But what would you say, if you could have picked one, was your biggest challenge during that first 12 months of you being in business?
Cash flow. Not having all those skills around you. Bless my parents to death. I've been a bloody nightmare to them. But I had one of Dad's old office desks in this bedroom, and I had all these invoices out. And Mum and Dad haven't really realised what we were doing, I suppose. And we're having difficulties getting payment out of Aston Martin. And we'd been very, very lucky, and we'd done all the interior for the new, at that time, the new Vanquish, and it was full of technology, but we did all the interior. So I've got £86,000 worth of delivery notes and invoices all in a muddle. Nobody's paying me. I can't get the wages away. We don't want to overdraft. The bank manager doesn't understand what we're doing. Mum was like, what are you doing? And we started to systematically get everything in order. Mum's like, this is nearly £100,000, Graham. I said, yeah. And that's when it became slightly more serious. And from that point on, it's all about the people, and you get people around you as quickly as possible that have got the skills that you haven't got.
And what was the chain of events that led to your first acquisition that you mentioned there? Was it in 2001 is when you made your first acquisition of another business? Yes.
Technology was moving quickly. Our particular niche that we'd formed, this groove, was starting to become more accessible to bus companies, train companies. We're making quite a few bits for boats at the time as well. But people were designing things on a computer. So we were going from having patterns handmade to having patterns machined, or having tooling, beautiful tooling that was all handmade or precision or welded, to composite tooling that was all high tech. And we didn't have that skill. And I looked into it and I thought, well, went around and asked for some advice to buy an autoclave, to buy a CNC machine, to buy all that skill and bring it into my own business would have taken probably 2 years. To do an acquisition, I can do a business plan, raise some money. This is what I want to do. And as soon as you've done the acquisition, you've got it. So acquisition number 1, we got 2 more ovens, 2 more autoclaves, a great big CNC machine, and 70 staff immediately.
70?
Yeah. It was like David taking on Goliath. We bought a business that was bigger than us.
Wow, that strikes me as, in terms of incorporating people from another business, particularly that many when they've been a larger business than you, into your way of thinking and your way of working and your culture. How smooth was that transition?
It was dreadful. The biggest problem with that was it was the company we acquired was where I did my apprenticeship. So I went back and bought Aztec.
Wow. Okay.
We were stood in, and everybody was in the laminating shop, and we'd had T-shirts done already, and here we are with the operations director of TWR Group that owned Aztec. He's addressing the staff to say, unfortunately, we've had an offer for the business. We consider it a good offer, and we've put it up for sale. So you've got all these people going, and then I walk in. And they said, bloody hell, he couldn't even make a good cup of tea. It was heroic. It was emotional. It was bumpy. And we thought that it would make our business better because they knew what they were doing. And ironically, years and years and years of no leadership, no planning, no accountability, which is a really important word that I think we should all be using at the moment. The business was in dreadful position. We walked in there and we had 5 weeks worth of cash. And that was based on the forecast of it doing 160, 170,000 pounds worth of sales a month. It had no sales. The due diligence had been absolutely duped. So we had 5 weeks worth of cash. We got in there, go, 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 go. Stuff starts swamping. The business then struggles to deliver the work that we're winning, and we subcontracted it out to a competitor. And then, we did this all happened in November. By the time we got to May, June, July, that competitor is then into trouble because he's overtraded. So that led to a second acquisition. And we bought them. So effectively, by the end of 2002, we had a team of people in Colville, we had a team of people in Derby, and we had a team of people in Ilkeston. And it was sort of the northern branch, central branch, southern branch. And it all happened incredibly quickly.
And what happened from that point onwards now? You've got these 3 sites. What was the next step?
Communicating with the senior team, the management, and trying to drill into all the costs. So back to my sporting background, I've gone down the river, I've gone as fast as I can, but it wasn't as fast as the previous run. That magic word, why? Look at the data, you've got gate 15, 16, 17 wrong. We're going like a steam train, our sales are pretty much £600,000 a month, we're not making any money. Why? Nobody could tell me. Nobody could tell me. It was the most frightening scenario, conundrum, if you like, you could ever think of. And we'd had some great help because at this point I've got a chairman on board. I've got infrastructure around me. People are starting to panic. And what got us through there is that we wanted to drive into the data, but we needed to generate the data. So instead of panicking, going with losing money, we took people on and made the accounts team stronger because that's where we needed the data from. We then put training programs into the factory because it just felt like we were making too much scrap and we needed to control that. And I went to the chairman weekly and went, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about this? And we just crept out of the hole But the chairman at the time, it was incredible because that was Sir David Jones. And he was the chairman of Next.
Wow. So, and how on earth do you find somebody like that to be the chairman of your company?
Well, our paths crossed because of another investment that he'd made. And he came into our works in Derby, and we were helping him with Noble Cars. And one thing led to another. The meeting wasn't particularly great, but then from nowhere, I had a phone call from his secretary. Can you come down to Next head office in Enderby? And I went down, bag, suit on, bought myself the Next tie because I thought I should. And I came out of that meeting and he invested £500,000. And I came out the meeting and I had a check on my steering wheel. I was holding it with both thumbs to EPM Technology, £500,000.
How does it feel to have a check of that amount in your fingertips?
Just handwritten, just like that. Boom, 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 just like that. It was unbelievable. And that man was a god. It was amazing. No, it was, and he was just so calm. And you knew he was in the building. I could be in the car park at the back, and I would know that he was in our building. And the things he introduced us to, and you know, the doors that opened because of him were fantastic. So he was brilliant. And 3 years later, he left the business with 2.5 million for his shares, and we'd repaid the £500,000.
Wow, not a bad investment on his behalf then.
No, and for a manufacturing business to be generating that amount of cash in that amount of time, and we came out of 2 pretty bumpy acquisitions, and we were £780,000 the wrong way at one point, and our accountant said, "Graham, you bust." And I could never get my head around that, and the relationship never really recovered from that point, because we then had data and we knew why we were bust. We knew we'd got one component wrong, and we knew we could get that right. So why would you give up? So we found that out I think it was about August time. And by February, we'd got the business back to zero. And by the time we got to the year end, we'd made a 300 grand profit.
So from that, realizing that you were £780,000 the wrong way, as a business owner and an entrepreneur, what was the biggest lesson that you took away from that, from realizing that the business was in that situation? People. And people around me had tried to be entrepreneurial, and one of the painful lessons, particularly over the recent times, I think you have to be very careful with this entrepreneurial tag, because people think, "Oh, I can be entrepreneurial," so that not everybody is entrepreneurial. So it's my job. It was my business. I was actually using data and protected the whole team, protected everybody around me, because people thought we were winging it. We went home every night and we knew we'd made money every single night. And if that meant pizzas were in and it was 11, 12 o'clock, so what? But we knew every night we'd made money. Getting into that hole, I trusted people that started to guess. Well, if Graham's guessing, I can guess. We weren't guessing. How do you fix that?
Well, ultimately, the only way you can fix it, and you've got to change your team, and you get all the moo about it. Well, you know, you've got to protect that company registration number at all costs. And if somebody wants to do a better job than me at that, buy it off me, put your name above the door, sign your signature on a personal guarantee, take the risks I'm taking, but don't take risks because you think you're Graham. Okay. A couple of people in accounts that struggled with the sheer volume. They weren't and of course lessons learned, we weren't very good at that point of recognising that, and we'd lost our way on margin because the management team wasn't good enough. So we literally put the brakes on in 2006, sold part of the Colville business to its best customer, closed the site in Ilkeston and moved everything into one central location in Derby. In theory, taking £3 million off the business, and everyone's like, ah! But at the same time, with the data, we got rid of 12 customers, and we took 16 people out of the business that were zappers and just zapping your energy. And if you're walking up to somebody on a Monday morning, how was your weekend? You want to, yeah, great, we want to be here. It doesn't always happen, but that's what you want. If people then start saying, well, my car tyre broke and my lawnmower broke and I baked a cake and I burnt it, and I'm trying my best. Sometimes you just got to sort that out. And with a business that's growing, you could have a really good guy that's worked wonders for you at £1 million a year, but is completely lost in a business that's doing £6 million a year. And they were two valuable lessons. Have the right people and absolutely insist on the data. Don't trust your gut feel.
Okay, some brilliant insights there. Thank you, Graham. Now, going back a little bit to the time you made the second acquisition, how long had you been in business at that point, roughly in terms of years?
6.
So, and how old were you, if you don't mind me asking, at that time?
28.
So you were 28, you were leading a successful business, working with some of the top motor brands in the world. You'd made 2 acquisitions. I suppose the question is really, how did you know what you were doing? Having no previous business experience and leading such a successful business at that time.
Well, we used to have a mantra, a little bit sporty, but making the impossible possible. When you're supplying Formula One, you're making the impossible possible. You're in the supply chain, and it's lovely, we're doing the World Championship bits, and we're doing Red Bull, we're doing this. You're in the supply chain because they need the bits quickly, and you're supplying those bits because you're doing it quicker than anybody else. Or there's a long-term relationship, or there's an agreement in place, or you're not doing it for the love and the glory. And. I was washing up on a Friday night. I was washing up. We'd done a rush job for Renault, and the part had got to Bahrain, but that one part had been stolen because it got to Bahrain unpainted. They painted it at the back of the garage, left it propped up against a wall, and it was stolen. So I'm washing up, I've cracked the wine open, the phone rings, and you've got a choice. Answer it or don't answer it. Making the impossible possible means you answer it. Julian Reed, Graham of Houston, we've got a problem. That part's gone missing. And we had the laminator on a curry night that night, and we got them all out the curry house, got them back into work. We made the part on the Friday night. Renault had a courier waiting for 3 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning. That then went to Abingdon Airport for something like 4:30, private jet straight out, and we made qualifying for Abu Dhabi.
Wow. And pulling those sort of feats and making that happen for businesses as big as Renault, does that increase their loyalty to you? Does that mean anything to them? Obviously, it means something to you as a business, and it's an amazing achievement. But does that come back to you in the long term from the businesses that you do those sort of things for?
I think so. I mean, people, particularly our competitors, and there's an awful lot of this, I think, in and around Derby. People see us making Formula One parts, particularly. Let's focus in on that. And they assume there's a lot of money in it. So you're making a bit that's the size of a biro, and it's £20,000. It isn't. And as a business unit, we consciously had a strategy to make the same margin on every single component. That was the plan. That was the goal. So if we're making a chassis because we were very lucky to be making Formula One chassis, the only composite company in the UK to make a Formula One chassis outside a Formula One team. And we made the same margin on that chassis as we would a wing mirror for Jaguar.
Wow. Okay.
Because we know our numbers, and every hour worked is an hour worked, and it's boom, boom, boom. Okay, the chassis is a big number, it's a 300-something thousand pound number, but that represents 300,000 man hours. You know, we could get a chassis through our business in about 46 days. So people do think you're making loads of money and you've got this big flash in the sand, but we're inspired by it. You go to the McLaren Technology Centre and you think, I want a factory like this. I don't want a grotty factory. I don't want a dirty factory. I want a clean factory. The first time I went down to McLaren's Technology Centre, there's 3 men with 3 wheelbarrows, and they're washing all the pebbles at the bottom of the fencing and putting them back. This is mad, but people say, Graham, you're a bit bonkers, but this is the world we're in. And you know, the grass needs to be cut, the sign needs to be straight, the vans need to be clean. And we just took that mantra and we really, really wrung its neck. But everybody knew that they were accountable, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and going back to the Renault part again, how do you instill a culture where the team is out for a curry and they come back to get it done, to make it happen? How do you instill a culture of anything is possible?
Because we a couple of things on that. We inherited a team that was not valued, and we valued them. Every time we did something and we did it well, we communicated. When the business was in trouble, we said, we're in trouble. When we found out where the problem was, not only did we find out what the problem was, we shared the problem, and the general manager, that was enough to fire him on. So that lifts the culture, because he was a bit of a blocker. And then every time you're doing something, we want to be the best. And when we were 2015-ish, we could have been a Grand Prix team. We were doing everything except the engine and except the tyres. We were making the front noses, the wings, the floors, the engine covers, the chassis. The factory it hummed. Everybody was on it, and proud to be part of it. And in any business, that culture, you've got to work so hard at it. And people expect people to come to work and be happy and want to be there. People come to work because they need money. And if they come to work and the cat's died, or if they come to work and something's happened with a family member or whatever, you know, you've got to react to that. And you've got to be sincere, and you've got to show some grace, but you've got to show leadership. And what we had was a whole group of people working in a factory that absolutely knew that from the front, we were leading a team of people. Nobody in the industry was working harder than me at that point to keep that factory full.
What were the attributes that you looked for when you were bringing on new people into the team? Were there any specific mindsets or beliefs or attitude, or what would you say made a good member of your team?
I've always been a big believer in what are your hobbies? You're going to earn really good money here. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to be a triathlete and buy gear, or are you going to buy a season ticket, or are you going to buy beer, drugs, and you can guess which one I want to employ. And unfortunately, you know, you bring people in and they start to earn really good money, and you've got to give them the skills and to handle that responsibility. And we're also trying to form a culture where we are competing with the Formula One teams. So if you don't mind travelling to Silverstone every day, there are some brilliant customers that are never going to run out of money, and they will employ you to do exactly what you do in Derby. So why stay in Derby? So it's culture, the type of work, the expertise, the thanks, all comes together.
Yeah, and you'd mentioned there in 2015 you were almost set up to be a Formula One team yourself. Was that the plan? Was that something that you were moving the business towards?
No. We were very, very lucky to get a business growth fund from Derby City Council, and we built a purpose-built composite facility out the ground in 9 months. Very, very, very fortunate to do that, and you know, that was a bit of a beacon for all the right and wrong reasons. We did push the boat out. We tried to do it to a standard, and you know, to our standard. As we were moving into it, one Formula One team went bust, and it took £750,000 of cash out of the business.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks later, a second Formula One team went bust with Caterham. That took a further £250,000 out of the business. So at that point, we were reporting our position daily. We got loads of support out of the Derby City Council over the building and what we were doing with that. But it was time to find some new investment. So we set sail on a plan: find work, find investment, find opportunity. And ironically, coming back to your question on Formula One, we nearly bought a Formula One team back to Derby because Manor Grand Prix had gone bust. We were in communication with the administrator firsthand because we were making the chassis. So 3 people nearly bought that business, and all of them had to see our contract about the chassis manufacture. So we were right at the top of the food chain. Anyway, all of those failed, and I went to the administrator and said, from an observer, you've got people with money in this hand, and you've got people that can do it in this hand. Can you put us with money? And 3 days later, we were within a phone call of 160 million, and we would have bought Manor Grand Prix up to Derby.
Wow.
And that was a consortium coming out of California. And that building would have been absolutely brilliant for that. But for a whole host of reasons, a little bit of a muddle around the ownership of Formula One at the time, because Bernie was fighting liberty a little bit. But that said, we were at the table. We had 6 or 7 conference calls, and these 3 individuals were involved in basketball, ice hockey and American football, and the 3 of them wanted to come together to get involved in Formula One, and they were going to invest in us to buy the team.
Wow, what an amazing feat that would have been, bringing a Formula One team to Derby.
Well, we've never really spoken about that before, because but it would, for all the obvious reasons, it would have been a game changer. But I kept thinking to myself, there's expertise in the teams to run a team. There's expertise out there with money, and the two very rarely come together. You know, I mean, there's only one Bernie Ecclestone. There's only 1 or 2 sort of Ron Dennises in the world, and you see people investing in football clubs as an example, and then they expect the club to be able to run itself. But all that happens is they go, "We've got money, spend, 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 spend." Nobody puts the foundations in to build, and I think we've got that skill set. So that would have been really interesting, but it didn't happen. We then won the job for U2 for their world tour, and that was a £1.9 million order that we delivered in 23 days. And at which point we had some investment lined up. We brought in these investors. It was a venture capital. You know, within days it was going wrong. Within the end of the second week, I got escorted off the premises, which was with security, which was a bit harsh. They then did what they said they wouldn't do, which was liquidate the business, and they stripped the business of everything they could, rebranded it, went again, and then 17 months later, having lost 1.8 million, I got the chance to buy it back.
Wow. Well, I've got a few questions off the back of that. But firstly, up to that 2017, when you had to leave the business, how different was the business then compared to the vision that you had when you first started off back in 1996? If you were to look back and speak to Graham of 1996, would you have had, would he have said, yeah, this is where I knew it could get? Or would he have been more like, wow, this is absolutely incredible, I could never have imagined this?
Oh, see, I'm conflicted. It's exactly where I wanted it to be.
So you knew you would get there. You always had that belief that you would take it to that level.
Always.
Where did that belief come from?
I don't know, to be fair. Just sheer belief. And people say, oh, you're an entrepreneur and you dream and all the rest of it. I set myself a goal. I wanted to be the best composite company in Europe. And to do that, we needed the best people. And to do that, we needed the best customers. And to do that, we needed the best facility. And I think that's where we got to. And unfortunately, we picked the wrong venture capital house to help fund the business into that next phase. And/or they saw an opportunity just to engineer a position, and of course, what happened. But we've been able to get back. We've taken £750,000 worth of cost off the business in 3 weeks. They lost 1.8 million over the 17 months they had it, and we got the business back into profit in February on month 3.
Wow. What did you do during your time out for those 17 months?
Recover, do a bit of soul searching, do some consultancy, get ready for the next chapter.
And did you keep in touch with what was going on? Did you keep a sort of feeler with what was happening at the company whilst you were away?
Not at all. I went on the website twice in all that time, because it was difficult for me to keep my sanity at a level, and it was also difficult for the staff because they were told uncertainty. Contact Mulholland, you get sacked.
Wow.
So they tried to divide and conquer, and to be fair, I think they completely misjudged the culture that we actually had embedded. And then, well, why are we working hard for you? You're just telling us we're crap. Graham used to tell us we were good. Graham used to share the reward. Graham used to this and Graham used to that. And then we're a high performance engineering business. And on the website, they put they made a picnic bench out of some pallets. It's just mixed messages. And it did feel like an own goal, and I genuinely found that difficult, because I thought that if the building's got the capability to do 25-30 million a year in turnover and house 250 people, and they went from 7 million to 2, and if they'd gone from 7 to 10 to 12, yeah, my ego would have taken a bashing, but at least the building would have delivered. And the people inside that building deserve that chance. But they got it wrong. So yeah. I took a phone call on a Tuesday night that I didn't recognise the number. I was out with Claire for dinner, took the call. It was a guy called Andy. Met him on the Wednesday, and we set the lawyers off Wednesday afternoon. And by Thursday at 4:30, we'd bought it. So the transaction to buy it back took less than 48 hours.
Wow. And how did it feel? You said you were escorted off the grounds by security. For those following sort of few days and weeks, I would imagine that, for most people, that would have put them in quite a dark place, having seen the company that they've put so much of their heart and soul into for the last 20 years taken away from them. How did it feel at the time for you? What were your thoughts? And did you know that you would come back one way or another? Maybe not with the same company, but did you have confidence in yourself that you'd find a way out of it?
I don't think I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be cross. They made a few promises that they didn't keep. So, of course, that bubbles along and it blah, blah. I then started to think, actually, constructively, I've got this period now in my life to sort stuff out. So what am I going to sort out? Well, it turns out I sorted a lot out. And I took the time to debug Graham. The things that you gather momentum on, and you've got to have an M6, and you've got to have a classic car, and you've got to have this, and you've got to have that. You've got to be sane, and you've got to believe in what you're doing, and you've got to have a plan. And I thought they'd taken my plan away, and that was difficult to live with. But trying to unpack that and unpick it and repack it just took a bit of time. And then as soon as the bloody phone call came in, we were gung-ho. And straight back through the door.
And so previously, the company was obviously called EPM Technology Group. And I was reading an article from another interview that you did. You obviously came back and named it Mulholland Group. And there was a statement or a phrase from you that said, putting my name on the company shows the intent and the determination to achieve our goals. What was the reasoning for coming back and changing it to Mulholland and putting your name above the door?
Well, we had a lot of success as EPM Technology. The venture capital company put that into administration, and they renamed a new co, EPM Composites. That's then gone into administration. So all the suppliers have had a bath, and the people that lend the money on the equipment, and they, they've had the second or third baths on that debt. We had rats in the back of the building when we walked in because they hadn't had the skips emptied for months. And you think, good grief! And you've got all the staff there. What next? What? And I sat there, I bounced the idea off Dino, to be fair, as well. So what do you think to this? I'm going to put my name above the door. And it sends a statement to all the customers. We're here for the long term. We're not here today, gone tomorrow. And we've started to build up. I mean, Corona's got bloody boom, and the whole country stopped for all the right reasons. But we've built up this momentum, dare to dream. So moving on from making the impossible possible, there is an element of Graham that sort of gets things slightly wrong, to sort of overcomplicate things, to almost make a muddle to put it right. And I think that is a bit entrepreneurial. It's a bit of a trait. Let's bugger it up a bit so we can put it right. And I think putting your name above the door, we know our numbers, the suppliers know that we know our mustard. We ran a very successful business for 21 years. On the 22nd year, we built a building, and on the 23rd year, we had a £1.4 million hit. So not many people in manufacturing can say they ran a £6 million business that generated 1.8 million in cash.
No, most definitely not. And when you took once you'd taken the business back and you turned it around quickly, what were some of the key things that you did to make that happen? Did you already know what you were going to need to do coming back into the business, or did it take a while to discover what those things were?
There's a few traits. If you're going to be a GKN or a Rolls Royce, you can afford six-figure salaries, and you can afford expenses, and you can afford and can afford and can afford. Culturally, it had become take. What can I get from this business? Nobody was working together. The exec team are there to lead it, and they're right. And Graham, you've turned up. We're going to run it for you. We want 1.4 million in cash. Here's our business plan. Get going. And I just looked at the moment. This is an absolute joke. This is an absolute joke. They've just got this completely around the bottoms. And to be fair, one of the things we did get wrong, we didn't take enough advice, because I lost my temper in one meeting, but that cost me a lot of money. But so the exec team just had to go. And again, you're doing lessons learned. The staff see that you're making a change. They're saying that person used to just take lots of money out of the business. That person used to, a cheap hotel wasn't good enough when he was out. He wanted an expensive hotel. All these sort of dribbly things, which you can roll out if you're a £10 million business. You can survive. But if the sales are dropping, you can't afford a huge amount of overhead. So we cut the overhead. We got the business back to profit. In February, we made £23,000 profit. It's like, come on, we're absolutely rocking this out. And then we've as a management team, we've looked at what's going on around the world. This is obviously having a big impact. How do we help? What do we do? How do we protect our staff? How do we protect our business? And because we bought it out of administration, we were in a really fortunate position where we've got £120,000 in the bank. We can wind down to a stop. We've furloughed all the staff, and there's 12 months worth of orders to come back to, where a lot of our competitors haven't had the cash to pay the wages for this 5-week furlough, and they've got suppliers saying, carbon fibre, please, you need to pay for that. So suddenly you need lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money to bridge that 5 weeks. We went slow, pause. We wouldn't use the word stop. We've paused the business.
Yeah. And
when we get the go-ahead, we'll be back. And we've got this huge WhatsApp group we're all sharing, and we're communicating. As soon as we know we're going back and the date we're going back, the grass will be cut, the car park will be jet washed, and we will be on it.
Yeah, and I'm sure many of us are looking forward to that day, which we hope comes sooner rather than later. So looking back over that 23-year career now from starting EPM Technology, if you could pick one moment that you would say is your proudest or your biggest success that really stands out, what would that one be?
Oh my goodness. The U2, in terms of projects, the U2 World Tour screen was pretty special because that was 65 metres one way, 15 metres high. And that did a world tour, and that technically that was a very clever bit of kit. Some of the cars we've touched are pretty special. We did Daniel Craig's Casino Royale DBS with the defibrillator. That was a pretty special moment. Hitting a number and taking the people with you is pretty special.
Yeah, there's some awesome moments there. It sounds like it has been an amazing journey. And if we were to sit down in 12 months' time and have this discussion again, what would you have liked to see and happen between now and then? What's in the plan for the next 12 months?
Well, I think we've got to dare to dream. We would have probably dithered in and out of a recession. This is going to go bang, recession. Let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Think big. Dare to dream, get your ducks lined up, get a buffer, and we've got quite an exciting projects that we want to bring to market. So we're going to be supplying composite components, we're going to be selling technology, and we're also going to have a dabble and launch something you can sit in and steer and change gear and drive.
Wow, okay, it sounds interesting. We'll definitely be keeping up to date with those developments on that one, but it sounds like you've got some magic up the sleeve there.
Well, we've done everything over the years. We've done everything really for every niche vehicle manufacturer, and Tesla's kind of proven that you can wriggle into this space and be a bit disruptive, and we're going to do a beautifully sculptured car that's sort of in the the spirit of the old TVRs, the old Blackpool TVRs, where they're beautifully sculptured, but we're going to be throwing technology at it. So it's a carbon fibre bodied vehicle, carbon fibre chassis. The first cars are going to be a V8 engine, but we're already rolling into a hybrid system to link into that power drivetrain, and the chassis can adapt to batteries. Wow. But we want to sell technology, make parts, and make a car.
Wow. And has that changed then? So from going to 2017, when you were no longer at the business, to coming back and reflecting and reviewing everything that's gone on, are those new plans that you've put together since you've come back, did that time away give you an opportunity to think and think about where you wanted to take the business in the future?
The second half of my time off, I commissioned a vehicle. So okay. I went to an automotive vehicle designer who I know is a great friend of the family, the Mulholland group, if you like. We've worked with him many, many times over the years. He is the ex-TBR designer of note. And I said, Damien, where would you put this high-tech, beautifully sort of 1960s inspired, beautifully looking brum brum? And we got it down to 3 concepts, and we've developed one, and we've got a carbon fibre chassis going straight on the machines as soon as we are allowed back in that building. We're going to be making the chassis, and then we'll be launching it to the press, and hopefully within 6 weeks of the chassis being finished.
Wow. So given everything that's happened since then, and this is going to be an interesting answer. Hindsight's always obviously a wonderful thing, but given that where you are, obviously taking into account the coronavirus situation, which would have happened either way, if you could go back to that 2017 stage and continue as happened, or you could decide not to have investors come in at all, or you could choose better investors, would you choose to change anything based on where you're at now? Are you, again, in hindsight, not necessarily glad that everything panned out the way it did, but would you change anything?
There's a few things inevitably that you would change. We could have been braver at certain points in our time, and we were offered. In trying to get the right valuation for David Jones's exit, we went through a process, and we had a very strong offer on the business at that point. Benefit of hindsight, one should have taken that. But you live and learn, and I think people run businesses for all sorts of reasons, and people think you're running them because this and because that, because holiday homes and helicopters and There's not many people that live that lifestyle off the back of running businesses, but what you do get is the flexibility, the freedom, and you can enjoy bringing people together. I came out of Woodland School in Allestree with 2 GCSEs, and I was sat in Westminster with Vince Cable, the chief executive of GKN, the chief executive of Atkins Group, the managing director of Airbus UK, talking about the UK's future high advanced manufacturing strategy. And for 3 years, I was on the manufacturing advisory board, and Lord Mandelson used to chair that. And you would be in at the Business Innovation and Skills building in London with proper people. And you think, wow, wow. How lucky have we been to be in this, be positioned like this, and keep our focus on being in Derby with great people, employing people, watching them have holidays, buy kitchens, buy new houses, buy new cars. You bring the pound from wherever it is in the world back to Derby, and your job as a business leader is to distribute the pounds to your employees. And you don't need any excuse to get out of bed for that.
Okay. No, love that, definitely. Now, you've mentioned some extremely accomplished business people and entrepreneurs, and you know, some very high profile people, and from your own experience and from what you believe has made you successful, as well as meeting lots of other successful people, what would you say, if you had to pick maybe 2 or 3 attributes, are required or absolutely needed to become the owner of a successful business, such as what's now the Mulholland Group?
You've got to be consistent. I struggled with that in my early days. I still struggle with it now, I suppose. But you've got to be consistent. You've got to have a plan, and you've got to believe in that plan, and you've got to action that plan, and you've got to give yourself the time to understand what that takes. I want to be the best composite company in Europe, and therefore I need the best customers. Therefore, I need the best people, and I need the best equipment, and I need the best facilities. That was the plan. And you've got to seriously believe in what you're doing, and you could never, ever, ever give up. Whatever is flying around you, it can be solved. You just can never, ever, ever give up.
What would you say is some of the best pieces of advice, or what is the best piece of advice? You've been around some, like we say, extremely accomplished people. Is there anything in particular that stands out that has really aided you, that's been passed on to you from any of the people that you've worked with, or the business people that you've been around?
Never forget where you've come from. That's a biggie. You wake up every morning, and you'll no doubt have a shower and a shave and a shit like everybody else. Don't let it go to your head. Don't suffer fools. If you've got the opportunity to have the best people, don't put up with people that zap your energy. And yes, that's a bit brutal, but we've all got an opportunity to go to work every day. We're very privileged to have that opportunity. And if somebody comes in and thinks that they're owed that job, then they shouldn't be in your team.
Okay. Do you do any reading, Graham?
A little, not enough.
Is there, from those that you have read, is there one book in particular that stands out that you'd recommend to other people listening or watching to this right now?
The Tesco's chief executive, he wrote a book when he came out of Tesco's, 10 key management something or others.
Leary, is it? Terry Leary?
Terry Leary, that's right. I picked that book up, and I did not put it down until I'd finished it. I thought that was a fantastic read. I wouldn't get too tangled up in the sort of the chaos of the Virgin story and juggle and spinning it. You can run a business successfully without being in chaos. And some people drive for that chaos because they think chaos makes you busier and more successful. You can work at 70% of your capacity really efficiently and lift your game when you need to and drop it again. They're things I've learned, and there's lots and lots and lots of books out there, sports-based. They're all about your mind. So another thing we used to have, customers phoning up all the time, boom, 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 what next? And where we used to make, we used to have a canteen upstairs, and we had a sign at the end of the corridor, think correctly under pressure, teacup. And all the engineers used to walk towards it, read it, walk back. And that was from Clive Woodward's book. That's a brilliant, brilliant book. And he does link sports and business quite nicely. So I would recommend anybody reads those two.
Yes, 2 great recommendations there, and the links to which will all be on the show notes at benjaminbrain.co.uk/Graham-Mulholland. And staying on the book theme, Graham, if you had to write a book about your own journey in business so far, what would you call it?
The Boy Did Good.
Okay. Simple, effective.
What would you call it? It would be a short book. Oh dear. Oh, I know what the title would be. The obvious title. Being Better Than Dino.
Okay. I'll leave that one to you two to duke out on that one. I'm definitely not making a call. So I've just, before I let you get off, Graham, I've just got a couple more questions before we wrap up. My first one being, if anybody wants to find out more about what you guys are doing at the business at Mulholland Group, or they want to find out more about yourself, Graham, whereabouts can we find you online? Where's some good places to go?
We're pretty strong on LinkedIn. I like that as a platform. All the Twitter stuff tends to get lost a little bit, and there's obviously lots of stuff going on at the moment on Twitter. And I just think we should all be rallying around the NHS, and particularly Boris, not becoming keyboard warriors. But we're very strong on LinkedIn, and our own website, mulholland.group. Is now live. Our new website is now live, so there's plenty of stuff on there, and we're very accessible. Pick the phone up, ring us. If somebody wants some advice, somebody's got an idea, somebody wants a thought, it'll cost them time. That's all. So very, very accessible. I try and keep that as honest as I can, and we'll do as much as we can to help anybody that wants a bit of advice and wants some help or wants some guidance. So yeah, pick the phone up.
Okay, Bill, no, thank you for that. Very kind offer from you as well. And we've talked about a couple of the attributes that you feel are required to be successful in business. But if we were sat in front of somebody right now who was about to start for themselves for the first time, and you could give them three specific pieces of advice, what would it be based on all your experience and your lessons so far?
Plan. Accept that you might not stick to the plan, and have resilience.
Okay, brilliant.
Absolutely, it's as simple as that. But your plan's got to involve your numbers. You've got to be in front of your customers. You've got to be resilient. Okay,
there you go. 3 great pieces of advice, definitely spoken from many years worth of experience from a brilliant entrepreneur and business owner himself. So once again, Graham, I just want to thank you for taking out some time to join us on the podcast and share your own business truths. I've really enjoyed listening to your story and soaking in some great business lessons as well that I'm definitely going to be thinking about over the next few days, especially now we've got some time to think over this coronavirus situation.
Well, it is dreadful for the country, but you know, I'm also thinking about that and thinking, well, maybe this is showing us something. Every 5 years or every 7 years, should we have a pause? The air is clear, the sun's up, the roads are clear, we're re-engaging with our families, we're discovering all sorts of stuff. You know, I think there are lessons to be learned here.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and there is definitely, amongst all the devastation, there is definitely some good happening, like you say as well. The world seems to be healing a little bit at a time at the moment. So just want to wish you and the whole team at Mulholland Group the very best of luck for the foreseeable weeks and also the future. Looking forward to seeing those concepts coming together and seeing the vehicle in the press in the next 6 weeks. So thank you for joining us, and to all the listeners and viewers, as always, thanks for your support. Look forward to catching up with you on next week's episode of The Truth About Business.